to burnt offerings. Join us for lunch and a great cigar. So, for those of you that aren't aware, burnt offerings is a time where a bunch of Holy Smoke guys get together for just 30 minutes at lunch on Tuesdays, and we open up the Word, and we do like we do at Holy Smoke. We try to let the Word of God do the work of God, which simply means there's no sermons here. We're going to read the Word, and then we're going to discuss it together, and hopefully the Holy Spirit just reveals to us what it's saying. And we're currently we're marching through Nehemiah, right?
Right.
So that's it. Welcome. Thank you, and please share and feel free to comment. If your comment is we're out of focus, don't tell us. We know. Something's wrong with the autofocus camera, and it's going in and out. So anyway, guys, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah. You wanna open us up, Mr. I voted?
I voted.
Yeah.
The lines were long.
It's good as sign. That's a good sign.
Because they're all broke.
Nobody's
All right.
working. Nobody's working. They're all broken. They're voting.
Well, so we're deep into Nehemiah, and he wants to build the wall. He got permission from the king, and so now
Nehemiah chapter 3.
3.
And this is we're not going to read the whole thing. Nehemiah chapter 1 or chapter 3, verse 1. It starts out by saying Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. And then it goes on, right? They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho, and here we go, right? So it's a little bit of, it's a list of who built what, where they built, and so on. So instead of reading all of it, I think we'll just kind of pull out maybe 3 scriptures and see if we can get something to chew on a little bit. So verse 5 says the next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. So here you had these nobles who were men of standing and stature who wouldn't work. And probably a couple of reasons. We see earlier that the nobles were in some kind of alliance with Sanballat, Tobiah, which are the enemies of this project. They don't want it to happen. They're working against Nehemiah and the Jews who want to make it happen. And the nobles, we don't know if these particular nobles, but the nobles were aligned with Sanballat and Tobiah because there was some kind of power and wealth that they had together. But I find it fascinating that here these guys were of standing and they wouldn't work, right? It reminds me of pride. And I think there was a fair amount of pride involved. So how would you define pride? I mean, let's just start with that as a question. How would you define pride?
Well, I mean, in this instance, I'm thinking of these guys. Well, before you ask the question, I was thinking to myself, this is a lot like painting. And, you gotta prep, pick the right stuff. You got the right, you gotta get all the right materials. And then you spend a ton of time sanding, spackle, whatever it is you're working on, right? And then you spend this crazy amount of time masking off just perfect. And the painting actually lasts about that long, right?
Right.
The painting's like quick and you're done. And then you got to clean it all up, and it's not about the painting. And I kind of was thinking that, I don't know why, this is nothing profound, it's just the way my weird brain works. These guys were kind of like the paint, and I think they kind of wanted the setup. I mean, I think that if you're going after different people, we probably needed to prep a little different and speak to them in their language. And so if you can control proud people by how you present it to them.
Okay.
And the same people will do the same work, but some guys like us, most of us, if we had something to do, well, you just say, be here at 5, all right, and we'll just do it without, just because we're that close, we're that tight, you wouldn't ask me if you didn't need me, I'm there. But in this instance, there's no discussion. It's like it's these guys' turn, and now they don't want to work. I mean, did they not, I don't want to say pander to their pride or their ego or whatever. They didn't get the right setup. I'm feeling like, I don't know.
That's interesting.
I think they were just above it. They felt like they were.
And I know it had nothing to do with your question or what it's actually saying, but the minute you started reading, my mind went to that, like, well, these guys need some special attention. They're not just going to jump in and do this work.
No, I think they felt like they were more important, too important for that, right? Maybe.
Is that partly the definition of pride? Is when we feel like some things are, we deserve something at a certain level, or we're too good for whatever it is.
I think, isn't it in Romans chapter 12 that it says, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but think of yourself to have sober judgment? This idea to have a realistic perspective about yourself. So I think pride is not thinking, if you're Tom Brady, you're thinking, and rightfully so, I'm probably the best quarterback that's ever lived.
And I still lost half of everything I owned.
So not the smartest.
Right.
Just you make more money than him. So there's that.
It was a good one. He might have come out okay.
So I lost more than half of what I owned.
And so what was your point?
I guess my point is humility, or the opposite of pride, is not to think of yourself to say, oh, I'm terrible. I'm the worst person on the planet. I've got no abilities. I can't do anything. I can kind of be that way sometimes, self-deprecating. But it's not the opposite to think you're above, like what you were saying, above working, putting your hands to the work.
If you're Tom Brady, you complain and yell at all your linemen,
Right.
your receivers.
Right. Because, well,
It must be their fault.
they're not doing their job.
Right, right. But you know, the other issue is, one, they probably didn't have the ability because they're noble, so they didn't have to do an honest day's work. I know, pardon me? Didn't know how to do it. You know, and a lot of times you show your vulnerability and your incapableness when you try to help, and all you do is end up belittling yourself or leaving yourself for ridicule because people are like, this guy doesn't even know how to do whatever. You know, we actually have that in the military.
Yeah.
Some of the officers, they can't get involved because they don't know what they're doing. And the enlisted a lot of times say, man, this guy's my boss and he don't know squat. Well, he knows more about administration and all the other stuff, but the work belongs to the enlisted guys who are the experts at that stuff. So a lot of times you won't see an officer get involved, because if he does, the troops are just going to say, this guy's my leader and this is the way he does it, you know, so.
They can't afford to be directly involved because they won't be able to lead the same.
Exactly, absolutely.
So this is just a little pre-Veterans Day commentary.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've heard that in a battle, the commanders or whatever, they don't display their stripes or whatever because they don't want to be targeted.
That's right.
So it doesn't appear though that that's what was going on, that there was this is in the best interest of everybody, because nowhere in chapter 3 where it's listing who did the work all around the wall. So everybody it's really brilliant organization on Nehemiah's part, where he said, okay, you're going to do this part, you guys are going to do this part, you're going to do this part. Some worked by their house, some worked a distance from their house, but he coordinated them in such a way. Maybe he asked for volunteers, not sure, but this is the only group it says they didn't put their shoulders to the work.
Now, did it talk about, so we don't know what part they were supposed to do, that they didn't work?
Let me look at this.
Because I mean, I was thinking of Game of Thrones, you know, when they found the weak point and they went to the Dung Gate, because evidently that was the weak spot when they conquered that.
Oh,
one.
right. It just,
And I
no, it
think
just
so.
says the next section.
So this one, so the Sheep Gate went first, and then they just said the next section.
Well, then there was the Fish Gate, and then they leaned. Then there was the next section.
So it wasn't that the part they got assigned was beneath them. It
No.
was just work in general.
It was just work in general. It appears.
All right.
Yeah, just repair.
It says they didn't want to work under their supervisors.
I think
So maybe
that's
they
key.
felt like we should be doing the supervising, not whoever you put over me to be the supervisor. We talked about that on Sunday. That in the early church, slavery was a way of life in the first century. I mean, it's just the way it was, and the Bible doesn't affirm it as a moral thing. It just talks about it as this is the way things are, right? So you would have in the first century church, you would have slaves and you'd have their masters in the same church because they were coming to faith in Christ. And sometimes the slaves had a higher position of leadership in the church than the masters, right? So if you're prideful, you say, well, I don't know if I could serve in the children's ministry under so-and-so. He's my slave. I mean, I should be the one leading the children's ministry or worship or whatever it is that, I don't know if they had any of those things in the first century, but.
I think that's key because it does say put their shoulders to the work under their supervisor.
So I think pride keeps you from a couple things. It keeps you from participating in God's vision. And it keeps you from, I think it keeps you from community, right? That it kept them from really engaging with, this is what God's doing, and we want to be a part of this. And you wind up in the Bible with your only mention being you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
I don't know if it's pride or if it's just we all think we're too busy, but many of us have volunteered at missions or at different things on Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. And what a wonderful feeling that gives you. It's certainly below our stature in life. It certainly takes time away from us preparing for the holiday or whatever. But what a beautiful thing that service is. It really, when you have a homeless person come up and say thank you because you gave them something or you fed them or whatever. I mean, I told the story before when I donated some old jogging suits and at this Thanksgiving, one of the guys was there wearing my jogging suit. And I thought, wow, my trash is his treasure. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And that's a great feeling. So I think they needed to humble themselves a little bit. If they would have known that, they would have felt that feeling, being part of building those and repairing those walls and gates.
If these guys would have known their future, then 2,800 years later, we're going to be reading about how these guys did not put their shoulder to the work.
Right.
Instead, they're thinking, we'll just show up, we'll be part of the group,
And
we're
the
going to get our
nobles
name on the plaque or on the wall.
And the
or the
nobles
fence.
jumped in and helped. Wow, it would have been much more powerful.
It says later in verse 8, it says, Uzel, son of, and this is going to show my ignorance because I can't read some of these names, but Herahiah, one of the goldsmiths, repaired the next section. And Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. They restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. So here you have a perfume maker and goldsmith doing masonry work.
Who probably were pretty high up in the hierarchy of labor.
Undoubtedly. Perfume maker for sure. They were making expensive items for wealthy people to
And the
take
gold
advantage.
for the churches and
Right.
stuff.
It's like a jeweler would be nowadays.
Yeah.
He's out there helping paint or whatever.
But they're all blue collar. The noblemen weren't. They
Right.
probably didn't have a trade. I mean, how did they become a nobleman?
Right.
Probably
You're
not
born
as
into it.
a blacksmith or something.
It's like politics. I mean, it's simple.
It also has me thinking you got in all this Nehemiah, the royal sommelier, right? The wine taster, wine keeper. He's out there starting. So before these guys jumped in, what active humility then that is. That's my contrast. You got these guys, but then you also, I don't know if maybe it's just because our culture puts more reverence towards wine in some ways, so we think that's really cool versus back then. But he was pretty high up. He had a daily audience with the king.
Well, yeah, he's a
And now
farmer.
he's out there.
He's a farmer, basically. I mean, he had to grow it. And
He oversaw it.
He had a daily audience with the king.
right.
And he's out there. Then that's another.
Let's not also forget that God's clearly saying how much he favors entrepreneurs.
That is very clear in this. Let's mark that down as
Appreciate that.
an understanding.
Words of wisdom. Right. Way to go. All right.
Yeah. So far I've got, don't be a noble. Don't be like the nobles.
Don't be like nobles, but be like the goldsmith and the perfume makers who stepped out of their training, their comfort. I mean, it's had to be uncomfortable for them. And how many times do you say, I don't want to do that. I'm not good at that. Right? I mean, we need help with children's ministry at our church, but how many people say, I'm not good with kids? So you just basically say, well, I exclude myself because I'm not trained or I don't have that gift or it's not my thing. But this goldsmiths and the perfume makers, they dove right in, made it happen.
Which is a contrast to the nobles who
Yeah,
for the
in
same
contrast.
reason, you could argue, didn't want to participate because they weren't comfortable with it. I mean, excluding the pride.
Right.
Is
They
part
could
of
have
that.
dove in too, right? Here's a hammer, you learn as you go. It's the guy doing jewelry or perfume is learning as he goes.
Does it partially show their commitment to the whole cause?
Yeah.
Where the jewelers and the wine taster, all these guys, they don't care. We want to get this project done. It's for the Lord. And these
Maybe
guys,
the nobles were fat.
we're just showing up.
Nobles were fat?
Maybe the nobles were fat.
Okay. What are you trying to say?
Just trying to figure it
They should be strong enough to put their shoulder to the wheel.
Right.
They got more leverage.
Have you ever disqualified yourself because either it's not your gift or maybe you don't like the idea of whatever it is that's going on? That's probably the nobles were similar to that. They didn't like the idea that was going on. The goldsmith and perfume makers, they went ahead and jumped in. But I like that. I like the fact that the vision was more important than their insecurity. Or what's the word for you're not good at something? Expertise or a lack of expertise, maybe. I think that says something about how important vision is. The vision is more important than your inabilities. It's more important than your pride. When it's God's vision, it supersedes those things, right? All right, verse 14. So we're just not reading everything because it's a lot of lists. Then it says the dung gate. And the dung gate was literally the dung gates where you threw out all the crap. And it was the least prestigious of all the gates. There was a lot of gates. But of all the gates, this was the least prestigious. It says the dung gate was repaired by Milchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakerem. He rebuilt it and put its doors and their bolts and bars in place. The next gate after that is the fountain gate, which that would have been the prestigious gate. Here, everything's being assigned, and you get assigned to the dung gate. Like, come on.
They knew not to put the perfume guy at the door. That would destroy his power.
Yeah. Well, I like that they put the apparent politician, the ruler of the district. They put the politician doing the gun.
Right.
That's rather fitting.
It is rather fitting,
Shuffling the shit.
Gave him the crap
because
down.
he's used to it.
I'm amazed that they have locks on the dung gate. because it's the bolts are
Right.
basically it says the locks. You need to
Secure
lock
it,
it.
yeah.
Secure
Yeah,
it.
you
Well,
have to
you want to
secure
keep
it.
that thing closed. Why is the fountain gate so much more prestigious?
It was beautiful.
Oh.
Um,
Is that where the water came from?
I don't think so, but I don't remember what was significant about the fountain gate. I think as I recall, I'd have to look at a picture now, but I think it's closer to the temple, if I'm not mistaken. But think about it. I mean, okay, so what did you rebuild? The crab gate. What did you rebuild? The fountain gate. And that's all. This whole thing, at least for me, just reminds me of the negative power of pride. And so, open question: have you ever been humbled or hurt by your own pride? Has your pride ever got you into trouble? And if it did, why?
Does showing off count as pride?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, we
Yes.
have a rule at HolySmoke. This is being broadcast all over.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
At HolySmoke, it would be a lot more honest. Let's set it
Correct.
HolySmoke, stays at HolySmoke.
I'll be honest. If you're ever good at something, sometimes you think that means that you're good at everything. So I've been very successful at stuff and then just ran off and thought I would do the very same thing in a whole nother similar industry and dumped a ton of money into it. And it just ate my lunch. And I look back and I apologized to my wife that I guess I was just prideful. I can remember at one point when it wasn't looking good. Now it was also 06 and 07, 08 when everything started to fall apart. But she asked, how are you going to, what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with this? And I said, well, I'm just going to outspend everybody else and I'll be the only one left.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So that's
Did it work?
that's total arrogance. Yeah, I got to the end of my money. No one else was left, but then I wasn't left either. And so, it lasted. The downturn lasted way longer. And instead of pulling back and being smart and just thought, no, I got this. And when I look at it, I wasn't praying about it. I wasn't, God, is this what you want me to do? I just thought you gave me these skills and you gave me the money to do it and you gave me the opportunity and you must want me to do it. And then that was it. And then I was just doing it on my own. I mean, that's all in hindsight because I never saw any of it while it happened. So the short answer is yeah.
Yeah. I remember I was a youth pastor and I had nothing but success up to this point. Every youth group, the second youth group I was a part of leading, we started with, 10 kids. And within probably 3 years, we were running close to 200. I mean, it was just rocking. And God was doing great things. Kids were coming to Jesus. I left there, went to a church in Northern California. Same thing. Started with a small group, blew up. We were doing this thing called Friday Night Live, and we'd have hundreds of kids there. I really thought I was it. God favored me, right? And then,
King Midas.
yeah. But then the whole situation at that church went south, and I needed to get out. Remember, I went to a church to be the senior pastor because I was 30 years old. Of course, it's time to be a senior pastor because I was old. And I took over this really small backwards church in La Habra, California. And I just knew that thing was going to explode and grow. Within 3 or 4 months, The entire board resigned. They hated me. Hated me. And it was, so 11, I was there for 11 months and left and went to a church where I worked as a youth pastor again. That was all my pride. It was like, I really thought that I was going to make it happen and it was going to explode. Because as a Christian, you can hide behind your pride because you're doing it for the Lord, right?
How many viewers we got, Devin, from La Habra watching right now?
Yeah.
Any La Habra chiming in?
I said, yes, we hate it.
Yeah, really,
He's
yeah.
right. He
In
was
capital
the worst.
bold, right?
Yeah. Well,
Curious which church that was, because I lived in
you want to
It
tag
was,
it on there?
it's probably been renamed. I think it became a Spanish church after I.
Oh, no, I didn't go there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did. I don't remember what street it was on.
I had an incident once where,
Once.
Yeah.
He's only admitting it to one.
yeah, well, it was humbling. It was really humbling. I was at a political event and I was a guest of the guest of honor. And when we sat down, I sat down next to him. He hadn't gotten there yet. And somebody came and asked me to move because someone else was supposed to be sitting there. And I just thought naturally that's where I was supposed to sit. And there's a Bible verse about that where Jesus says, don't take the seat because, you know, it's more humiliating to be asked to leave
There it is.
than to be asked to sit there.
Right.
And that was very, very humbling because the person who asked me to leave was really loud and said, oh, no. That seat's already spoken for. You need to sit somewhere else. And everybody got their attention was given to this person making this great announcement. So,
It's great.
yeah, so it was, that was very humbling. I just naturally assumed that's where I was supposed to be. And I've learned since then, I wait until somebody says, here, you sit here. And it was once. I never made that mistake again. I wasn't going to do that. No.
Me either. I always make a different mistake every
Yeah, different. Yeah. And that's, that I can agree to. I can agree to that.
I know
Yeah.
Frank was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I,
what about the whole overarching deal? You know, we talked about this story in the
Right.
Bible, and it was all about prayer preparation, and talking to God, and then the opportunity came. That was sort of the main theme, and then it was, you know, risk, and then it was, then we were in controversy and opposition,
Right.
And now they're doing it, and now we're sort of in the. I'm trying to put like bullet points on the whole series, and now we're in maybe the perseverance part. And to me, pre-planning, opposition, you know, direct opposition, I can deal with. Sometimes when there's a long period of in the endurance part, tough time. Especially if you're a visionary or you're, you know, Frank and I always joke about, man, you need something started, I'm your guy. You need something finished, you better start talking to some other people because that's not our gifting. Am I wrong, Frank?
Pretty much that's it.
Pretty much that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is kind of a tough deal because I mean they got momentum, but now we got what? How many years we got to get through this thing, right?
it's actually just a matter of months that this all
The
happened.
whole thing? Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not saying from the start of Nehemiah, book of Nehemiah to the end.
No,
But
the
The
construction.
building, from the time they start building, it goes so fast. It's like a miracle how quickly it happened. And it's because they mobilized so many people and these people worked jobs, right? I mean, they had jobs. So they worked and then did their jobs. There was people that they couldn't say, well, all right, we're going to take a few months off and not work. They needed to work their fields or whatever in order to keep food on the table. So they did that and worked on the wall and got it done in a remarkably short period of time. Yeah, it kind of goes back to your where we started with your painting analogy. I like when I paint at home, I don't want to do all the cutting in. I hate that. Hate it. I like the rolling because it's like fast and you can see and
Yeah, you see your results.
yeah,
right
you
away.
see all these results. Nehemiah did a whole lot of prepping, right? The taping and masking and all that stuff before they ever got to building the wall. So, that's got nothing to do with pride, but that I think the preparation is important.
He bathed in prayer for a long time and then basically risked his life
Right, for sure.
to, for sure, his career.
And he knew God was in it.
Yeah, he was convinced, right? And I guess that's the thing. Like my mistake, I should have.
Made sure God was in it.
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
a lot of times we go rushing out in front of God, and sometimes the more experience or talent or the previous successes, the faster we just rush out there because we got this.
Right.
Very true.
Stop remembering that it's God. And I know we're done.
God did it all in the first place. Yeah,
So we handled a whole chapter in one 30-minute session.
that's amazing.
That's,
We
we
can
only
just
you can do that on Sunday.
first three verses.
There's still only 3
Nice.
verses.
Yeah.
We'll follow the chapter.
So Devin, he's just gonna hit end right on time, and the rest of us we're just gonna keep talking.
So next week, see us or inquire. You'll always smoke on your own time, on your own terms. I put in the description here now. Like this Holy Smoke, this is an abbreviated sample version that's recorded for people online to see what Holy Smoke's like, and they can do something similar, more long form, with the cameras off, so you can get a little more real. So inquire with us if you're looking for more info. Beyond that, we'll see you here live, same time, same place next week.
See you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.